The opening paragraph of Justin Pearson's first book, From the Graveyard of the Arousal Industry, tells a story of how, like, when his mother had just given birth to him, that another new mother asked his mother if she wanted to swap babies, her Frank for Justin. I'm not sure that JP himself is sure of the truth of that story, but hey, we live in a world where fewer and fewer people, certainly in government, media, and other esteemed corporations, give fewer fucks about whether they tell the truth. So, I kind of feel that it's my turn to say that doesn't matter whether the story's true or not. Whatever, it feels like it could have been, like a precursor or almost like a metaphor for his life, where weird shit, the good, the bad, the absurd, the indifferent, and everything else you can define as weird often finds a way to his front door. There are just way too many stories for my brain to compute, but I guarantee that reading each of these 4 books will make you look at your own life, and afterwards, perhaps that temptation to buy the latest AI-infested fridge freezer appliance might be met with a little less enthusiasm, or perhaps you'll just think fuck that and crack on and buy it. Who knows? The world's very unpredictable. And talking of which, for me, it's the unpredictability of what's going to emerge from Justin's open-minded creativity that gives him such a unique, positive energy. And you can't predict what he'll be cooking up next and who with. And maybe that's because he can't either. Perhaps because that creativity just comes from instinct. But that it's going to be exciting, and that you'll want to experience it, or be part of it, whatever. I've really got tuned into the importance of energy, whether that's your own internal energy, but also the energy of your environment, whether that's the city, the forest, the stage, and the people that we surround ourselves with. Anyway, nobody really wants to listen to my smoke blowing shit, so let's just sort of crack on. I'm kind of like super excited to try and do some delving into these sort of things anyway with Justin. His mindset, things like self-belief, adaptability, curiosity, risk taking, all that sort of good stuff. So let's get on with it. Justin, brilliant to see you, man. How are you?
Good to see you. Thank you so much. I will say I'm really excited to be on your podcast. Not like finally, but finally, because we've known each other for a bit now, and it's been rad. And I've been following all of your work, so it's very nice. I'm excited. Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm glad that we're doing it. Sometimes kind of things just sort of conspire, but it's good that we've we can finally do it, because we last saw each other in November, I think, wasn't it? Yeah, end of November, over in a couple of dates in Europe, and then the famous one in Prague.
Oh yeah. So yeah, it's funny because every time I run into you, I'm like, it's like great intense. You're just like, we get into these conversations that aren't just like light. It's like all these like philosophical topics, and it's just. I mean, I remember even like talking to you like kind of for the first time really was like at some coffee shop in the UK somewhere in the morning once after a show, and I was just like, God, this guy's brilliant. Like, it's really wild. All the stuff we're getting into. It was cool.
This was Huddersfield. I remember that. I remember it was Huddersfield. I was literally, because I'd sort of come out of where I was staying, and I was just, I mean, Huddersfield's not a big sort of town centre, and you guys were just all in the shop front window. I didn't know where you were, and I just kind of saw you. I was like, oh, great, yeah. And then because I think we first met in Brighton.
Yes.
And I've got to say, I really I was a little bit nervous about sort of coming on that, because obviously I know Taz and Lars, and I'd spoken to to kind of Jeremy, Bill, and Alton. Alton had been on my podcast as well, so I knew those guys, but I was still nervous of meeting you all, because there's because of the dynamic, when you're a kind of touring group, and I didn't want to intrude, even though we were traveling separately. I didn't want to intrude on that, so I was a little bit nervous. But what I did really appreciate was at Brighton, when I think basically you just sort of finished sound check and immediately came over and said hi, and that was just like my kind of like all my sort of worries just kind of gone. I was just like, yeah, this is going to be fucking cool.
Well, I think I have a decent gauge for people. Like for one, I think like all the people in Fuck Money are so brilliant, and like I really trust them. So when they brought you kind of into the mix, I was like, oh yeah, then obviously he's on the level, and it wasn't like a let me suss this situation out and see if this guy or not. I was just like, yeah, this guy's gonna be rad, and it was correct. I was correct. Yeah, or they were correct or whatever. Yeah.
Well, I tell you what, so. About a month ago, I read your latest book, GG Alien and the Mystery Meat, which was like fantastic as always. And and there was a line that sort of stuck with me, and it was, since as early as I can remember, I've been willing to embrace absurdity, like no matter what, which I really loved. I loved that, and I don't think I've thought enough about absurdity. And talking about getting philosophical, I love getting philosophical, but I don't want to do it too much. But I kind of feel that absurdity, it sort of reminds us that we don't need to abide by the rule book or a kind of user manual for life. Mm. It's like if you let go of that, then I don't know, it's just sort of much more liberating. I don't know how you feel about it.
I mean, the whole concept of absurdity is like pretty massive, because I think like maybe because for me, I don't know, maybe my standards are different or something. Because I look at someone who's like, let's say, oh, I don't know, I got to be careful with the words I use here. Like someone who might be has an addictive personality, maybe, and that like would entail absurdity from like an addiction of something, that.
Yeah.
So there's that, and I don't know if I have that addiction necessarily. But then I also like read that somewhere that like when you eat like really spicy food, it's almost the same as like wanting to ride roller coasters and shit like that. And like I kind of don't like roller coasters that much, but I do like really spicy food. So I wonder like what these like highs are that we get. And for me, I just kind of look at a situation and be like, who knows what'll happen? Like, let's try that out, and I think a lot of people maybe are, I don't know if they're like more cautious, but maybe just more calculated, or fuck, I don't know if that's even the right word, but I think maybe cautious, like, oh, I don't know the unknown, I'm not going to go do that. And for me, I'm like, I mean, with that book GG Alien, it's like everything about it was just like absurd, and I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go do that, and then like I'm gonna be in these situations that are totally foreign to me, and I think maybe like a lot of people just don't try, they don't welcome these abilities to like to be in a bizarre situation.
I mean, yeah. So it's this kind of idea of comfort zone and kind of pushing yourself. I mean, I've got better at that as I've got older, I think. And it's interesting. There's a bit of I sometimes kind of think, well, in some areas of my life, I was better. I was more willing to go out of my comfort zone when I was younger than I am when I'm older. But really, I think generally speaking, I've got better at it as I've got older, about doing things that are a little bit more like kind of like, I mean, something as simple as starting this. When I first started it, I mean, it was Saskia that had to push me to do it. I was like, I'm not going to do, who the fuck's going to want to talk to me or listen to me, that usual sort of stuff, and she's like, I'll go and do it. So I had to be kind of dragged into doing it. And then, I'm looking for every sort of way to, avoid doing it or stop doing it. It's like, you get a rejection, somebody doesn't want to be on it, immediately look at yourself, that kind of stuff, and, but for you, it seems that I don't know. Does that enter the equation?
Maybe. I think it's a good point that you brought up, though, because I feel like, well, maybe with like writing a book or something, I mean, fuck, I don't know how to do anything. I don't even know how to play music, and I just like fumble through things, and I just try things, and I have fun. It might not be the right word, but I enjoy it, or I have a need to do it. So when I wrote my first book, though, so many people were like, it was very inspiring, very inspiring. It reminded me of myself in all these ways. And I'm like, you probably should just write a book, and to just anyone, like, I don't know, like some random person's like, that was very inspiring. I'm like, write a book. I did.
Yeah.
Who the fuck am I, So I think like, and same thing with podcasts, like not to diminish what you're doing or what I do with the podcast as well, but like, just if you can have a conversation with someone that you think is interesting, then do it, and like, this might be a good example too. Like when we started our podcast, Cult and Culture, it wasn't like I wasn't like, I want to be a podcaster. I just did these little like 10-minute segments while I was on tour. And it was just this thing I made for the radio, a local radio station. And it wasn't like, until I started working with Luke Henshaw, he's like, you should make that, because I had him on the last like sort of like little tiny segment. He's like, you should make this a full podcast. And so we did that. But I think like also a lot of people maybe that are successful at their podcast have it mapped out in a way for success, where like
True.
for me, I'm
Yeah.
just like, I just want to talk to people that I think are interesting, or maybe might provide a worthwhile conversation. And and so like, we would have like Martin Atkins, from PIL and Killing Joke and stuff, and then we'd have like the San Diego Black Panther Party. For me, I see like the connection to those two things, to the two sets of people, but like maybe to the podcast world, or like success or whatever, like you're like, pick lane, like, are you music, are you politics, or and so then I'm just like, okay, let's get into Klein, let's get Waddy from the Exploited, let's get whoever, and I think that that's like cool. I mean, I even like was trying to get this friend of mine from San Diego on it, who's like, I'm not gonna mention her name, but she's like pretty insane, like eh, not insane, but like she's insane. She infiltrated this like white power music festival thing, and I was like, dude, that is the craziest shit. You have to be on my podcast to talk about it. And she's like, nah. But like most people, she's not a musician. She's not like if you saw her name, no one would be like, oh, I'm gonna click on that link and listen to that podcast.
Yeah.
So there's like there's like the unsuccessful aspect, but I'm like, this person's so bizarre, are interesting. Like, I want to talk to them, and I think that's cool. And so I think what maybe a lot of people might not take that that risk.
Yeah. I mean, again, that's what I really like about the Cult and Culture podcast is exactly that, exactly like you said. It's kind of talking to people, and it is very much a kind of conversation. There's no agenda. It's like, let's see what comes out that's interesting. You get interesting people, you have a conversation, you listen to them, and then that's the interesting stuff. Not just asking, kind of like sort of stale sort of questions, but it's interesting the point you make about success, because like so much of the world is kind of has a definition of success that people feel don't look outside of that, which is usually kind of like have a career and kind of climb the ladder and all that stuff and get a bigger house and blah blah blah. That's a tangible success. But actually kind of doing stuff that is kind of, I suppose, sort of enriches your life is.
Yeah. Well, success is normally measured in like financial gain, like how much what are your assets from this thing, a product?
Yeah.
Like, are you making money? So like,
yeah,
in that sense, I'm completely a failure. I mean, I've managed to like avoid debt and stuff, but like I'm on EBT, which is like, I don't know, some sort of like version of part of the dole or something, I guess. Like I get, it's like, it's just like I don't make money, and that is a bummer for me at times, where I'm like, I can't pay my mortgage, I can't, put gas in my car or whatever. But I'm also like wildly successful when, like we were talking earlier, where like someone I don't know messages me on social media, and they're like, when I was 15 years old, your band Struggle, saved my life as a gay kid. I'm just like, well, that's crazy. Like, we didn't set out to do that, and we did it. And like that sort of like payment, I guess, I get, or like, I don't want to say like payment, like as a transactional thing, but like that sort of like success is massive. Like, how do you like,
you can't measure that. Yeah.
I'm not trying to suck my own dick, but like so many people have said like, your band saved my life, and that's fucking crazy shit that I like did not expect. So good.
That's
good.
That's such a kind of big reward, to have that, to be able to, because I always think that what was that? There's a story called the Hungry Ghost. It's this sort of idea that the more that you get, the hungrier you are. So it's like kind of like this kind of money thing. You have a goal of getting, I don't know, like what I said in the intro, this fucking fridge freezer. You know,
Yeah.
what's the next aim after that? You're never kind of satisfied. Whereas,
Yeah.
you know, kind of things like that, where you say, you know, you change somebody's life, that's never going to leave you.
Yeah.
That's the sort of, you know, I know we've got to, you know, you need money to kind of live and survive and stuff like that. But, you know, that kind of stuff is, to me, is like far more important, you know, in the whole scheme
It
of
is
things.
pretty wild, but also like it's the thing where you wow, there's two things. Well, one is like the more you are grateful, the more you have to be grateful for. I guess that's the way
Mm,
they people say it, right? So like um and then also like there's the fact that like when you have, you know, essentially nothing
mm,
monetarily, you know, you kind of find appreciation of things that maybe someone who's wealthy might miss. So like
mm,
if you're, you know, like look at these billionaires, like they couldn't give a fuck about the environment. They probably don't care about most simple things. Like I'm grateful for like good food or dog, you know, rescues or something that seems like pretty like most people are like, I'm grateful for my new car, or like I'm grateful for,
mm,
you know, some bullshit, like whatever, like stock
mm.
market, you know, stuff or whatever. And I'm like, I'm just like grateful that I am not dead, you know, and that like
Yeah,
I can like enjoy my day with my dog or something. Like that just seems
yeah,
like not that it's like that's not basic shit. That's like real shit. But it's like it doesn't like need nice, rich, you know, wealth. I
material
guess
things.
you know
Yeah,
it's like I'm just grateful. But there are times where people are like, "Come and play," you know, Australia or coming, and I'm like, yeah, I have no money, and like no one wants to bring me there. I can't just like fuck around. I can't like
yeah,
travel and like I can't spend. I mean, whatever. I'll go on tour and play music and do stuff like, but I can't lose money. I don't need to make
yeah.
it. I just lose. I can't
Can't
spend
lose.
it. I don't have it. So it's like
Yeah,
yeah, I
yeah.
can't go tour there because I don't have the money.
Mm,
But I'll go there and you know. So it's interesting. The capitalist ideals of like humanity, Western humanity, I guess, are like really prominent in the world of music and art, and that's such a crazy thing because I think when you start focusing on that, you lose your artistic vision. I bring it up a lot in like in the book GG Alien, and also in the other book How to Lose Friends,
mm,
and irritate people. Like a lot of that like stuff comes up where it's like what the fuck am I doing? Like I'm like I'm poor and I'm like in this world that like maybe isn't conducive to like I get like I feel like the help or I feel like a like lower class because of my tax bracket or whatever, you know. And that, it's a
mm,
really interesting thing. It's very humbling, and it's just it's bizarre, and especially when you see like bands. For me as a musician, like I do trip out when you're like this band's wildly successful, and I want to know why. And it's like, well, they won some kind of musical lottery, I guess, you know, or whatever. So that it is what it is. But like I think about the way they function and like how that might be interpreted by other bands who maybe are less fortunate. And so it's wild to like see that, to like kind of feel like the I don't want to start talking shit because I'm really good at it and I could name names and like bum a lot of people out, but like
yeah.
it's a drag to be like, oh yeah, your band can play our show. Here's $200. The tickets are
Mm,
$60 and there's 2,000 people at the show. And you're like, you're gonna just pay us 200. Like that's kind of fucking rude.
yeah.
And I mean, I don't know. But then it also makes me as and this isn't like like not it's not like competitiveness, but it's just like, well, I'm gonna just fuck you guys up, you know, like my band is gonna fuck you up and like be
Mm,
better and like be more righteous and like sorry. But like when you have nothing to lose,
yeah.
you have no restraints, you know. I'm like, I can go to 10 and just fuck everything up where like they have their like we have to write the song that's going to be a hit. We have to appease X, Y, and Z and like we want success. And it's like, I don't give a fuck. Like I just want to do this for myself and like the outcome, as long as I am happy with myself, that's all that really matters, you know?
Yeah. I mean, that's, that kind of, basic respect, the respect for, for you as sort of individuals, for you as musicians, when that's not just not there. Yeah. I mean, totally right. Just to sort of walk away and feel and have that, have that feeling. That's, I mean, that must be pretty tough to, handle.
Which part?
I think that I mean the respect thing.
Yeah.
It's just such a lack of respect.
Yeah, but
When you,
also, oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say when if you're looking at purely the economics of it, when it's such a disparity. I mean that I don't know
Yeah, but
that would
like,
really fuck me off. But
I get it. Like everyone, like, okay, I'm gonna not use the name of the band that I'm talking about, but like Def
mm,
Club opened a show recently, and they paid us a couple $100, and it was, yeah, it was like just under 2,000 people, which
mm,
I'm well aware that like we couldn't get a fraction of 2,000 people to go see us play, but there's value in like a good bill, and there's value in like if you're the headliner
absolutely.
having good support,
Yeah.
and um I think like that headliner or headliners had maybe most likely been in that opening spot, and it's like just be fucking cool and
Yeah.
like kick down a little bit more, because like, when you split up a couple $100 among four people, you pay your sound engineer, you have gas, whatever. You're walking out of there with $20, and that's fucking
Yeah.
bullshit. When the band's selling T-shirts for 40 and fucking signed posters for 80, and you're like, that's cool. Like I'm gonna fucking steal what I can from the green room before I leave, and like that just seems like really humiliating and like kind of a
Yeah.
bummer. But at the end of the day, it's like, hey, my band's ripping, and I'm glad. Like,
Yeah.
I don't want to get soft. I don't want to like, and also I don't want to be like a fucking capitalist dick and be like, yo, here, you're the help. Here's a couple $100. Go fuck off.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know.
When going back to your childhood, and your childhood's been well documented, and I don't really want to go into the you know stuff around that, but I'm interested in the why, like why, because it's something like why you why you kind of gravitated towards the people that you did, and
Mm,
the music. Because like when I've thought about this a lot for myself. Like when I was a kid, I kind of grew up in it. Like we were saying just before we started recording. Kind of my mum worked on a farm. My dad was sort of solidly, kind of working class. They didn't have anything, and he kind of like, taught himself. Got an education, became a mechanical engineer, and he was a singer. He sung in choirs. He was a really good sort of bass singer, and he wanted me to play music, right? And he got me playing the cello when I was
mm.
a kid, and I did all my practical exams. Theory I wasn't as good at, but I did some theory exams, but I passed all my practical exams. But it never felt like it was my own thing,
Yeah.
So I kind of gave it up in a kind of teenage, like, I'm not doing this anymore. But I kind of gravitated towards like sort of punk music. When I first heard the Ramones, that was it. It was just like sort of game over.
Mm,
And
mhm,
I've often wondered why before that I was listening to any old sort of shit that you would get in the charts.
mm.
But then this kind of, and I often wondered why that just kind of hit me.
Yeah, I wonder that too, because everyone always says like, "What are your favorite bands?" And it's like that's an interesting question, but like, why do you like that kind of shit is more
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah,
But I don't know, like for me, that you could trace it back through all these like different avenues of little things. Like I think a lot of it is the fact that I grew up really into science fiction and horror movies as a child, and like those
mm,
things translated into the music for me. Like obvious thing, like looking at a record cover with a fucking skull on it, or like some kind of weird shit. Like that's a thing that I liked, and a lot of it came through like Thrasher skateboard, or Thrasher
Okay.
magazine, like skateboarding, but
Mm.
also like a lot of it was just kind of um paying attention to like these little tiny gems that were like placed around. So like I always talk about this, like Ferris Bueller's Day Off was like a really big movie in the 80s, and it had Sigue Sigue Sputnik in it and Yellow, and those are two like
Mm.
very synth heavy bands that like I didn't know what that kind of stuff was. That when I heard this like weird synthetic like
Yeah.
sounded like space and sci-fi to me. And so I was like, oh yeah, I'm into that. And then I remember in 1984 when Van Halen 1984 came out, everybody loved Van Halen. They're fucking huge. And I think that record's great. And I liked all the hits. And then I got the record and I remember putting it on, and the intro is wild. It's like, it sounds like, I don't know, like something that maybe Kraftwerk would do or something. It's like this like weird synth piece. And I was like, what the fuck is this? This is crazy. So what, it was like I was 9. So I remember obsessing over that record and that band. I loved Van Halen. And so I remember, I can't remember, but I guess it's Jump or Panama or something, so whatever came out, and I was like, oh, it's so weird because it's in this, and I didn't know how to play music, but I was like,
Mm.
I could tell like who does what, and I could hear when the guitar solo happened, and then the guitar solo wasn't there, and the main riff, the main melody was a synthesizer, and I was like, wait a
Mm.
minute, this is like not rock music. It's like
Mm.
synthesizer music, like disguised, and so I was like obsessed with like figuring that out, and then yeah, that was before like the punk and skateboard or the skateboarding thing happened. So once skateboarding happened, it was over. And then I met the Cramps, and that was it, game over.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
even like taking music out of it, that band's aesthetic was just insane, and it was like a sensory overload for me because I saw them
Yeah.
play, and like 86 or 87, and it was like looking at a dude singing, shoving the mic down his pants, wearing like high
Yeah.
heeled shoes. I'm just like, this is fucking weird. And then obviously Poison Ivy, like seeing a
Mm.
woman play and just like have a bad attitude was like so much cooler than Eddie Van Halen on guitar. I was like,
Yeah.
shit, like that guitar guy is cool, but like Poison Ivy is like insane, and then there was
Insane.
like
Yeah.
so much to it. And then meeting them and having them treat me like a normal human being, which
Yeah.
like I didn't get from my parents or whatever peers or whatever. I was like, holy shit, this is
Mm.
crazy. And then that was it, like game on.
Yeah. That's an interesting one. And how they treated you. How old are you? You were like kind of what, 13, 12, 13 when you
I was
met
12
them?
when I met them. Yeah,
12
the first
when you
time.
met them,
Yeah,
and having them treat you like that.
so crazy.
It's,
And the only
that
reason
sticks with you.
the only reason I was able to like even, I didn't know what I was doing. I was just like, I this is gonna sound like totally lame and egotistical, but as a 12-year-old, I didn't know what I was doing. I was just like, I want to look like Sid Vicious or whatever, and I
Yeah.
probably looked cute as a little tiny kid trying to look like Sid Vicious, and,
Yeah.
and I'm not saying like I was cute, I was just like, but looking at a kid wearing like a leather jacket and spiking his hair up and like being weird and punk is cute. At 12, you're like, that's fucking adorable. And so like I just asked this lady that worked there, like, hey, can you ask them to sign my shirt that I bought, and like she was like, come on, and like come on back, and like just
That's
took me back
incredible.
there. And like the
Yeah.
fact that like I just looked like a tiny little Sid Vicious, and then I think most kids probably wouldn't have done that. I was with no parents. I was with like one friend of mine who I bailed on because they didn't ask him to. They were just like, yeah, and I just went. I was like, this is my opportunity, or like it was crazy. And I think like maybe most people wouldn't have, like if I had parents that were there, that wouldn't have happened. It
Yeah.
wouldn't. Like the fact that I had like this like sort of lawlessness where I could kind of try to navigate things on my own. It had its pros and cons, and like the
Yeah.
pros was like me being 12 and looking like Sid.
I think, yeah. I remember like thinking of like for me those sort of early the earliest gigs that I went to. I mean, I've been to a few before this, but one that I really remember, was still can kind of picture it. Was the Jesus and Mary chain in like about, I think Psycho Candy had come out, so around about 85, maybe
Yeah.
something like 86, something like that. And going to see that, and it was like, okay, the kind of like the rebellious thing had been done, but this was kind of something different. There's just kind of like this sort of wall of feedback going on, and it was just like sort of deafening in this sort of venue. And I just remember thinking, wow, this. And they played for like, I don't know, 25 minutes or something
Whoa.
like that, and this was just like, wow, this is so different to, I mean, I think I probably maybe seen 3 or 4 gigs before that, in my life, but this one, just because it was so different, just kind of
Mhm.
stuck with me, and musically, I think that it was just because it was so different that it stuck with me.
Mm.
And I mean, I've always loved that band, but that was and I've seen them since then, but nothing could ever compete with that one, where it was just kind of so raw.
Yeah, because maybe you have your, like, regular person rock expectations, and then there's this thing
Mm,
which is more, and it's not that it's like, I'm not trying to diminish it, but it's, like, heavier on the artistic side, and so you're
yeah,
you're you're captivated by that, because for me, it was, I mean, let's I'll be honest, like, Cramp songs are great, but, like, it's pretty basic, like, rockabilly music,
yeah,
and but, like,
yeah.
it was the aesthetic and the performance and the thing that you got from it, and I was like, "Oh," and also, like, I remember, I'm sure that's the same thing, like, being at, like, whatever year that was, seeing Jesus and Mary Chain, like,
Mm,
being in a venue as a younger person with, like, all of these, like, I was, like, just mesmerized by how everyone looked and acted, and it was,
yeah,
like, so fucking cool, and,
yeah. There
yeah.
was there was definitely some of that, yeah. Kind of looking around, and there's like these people that just look in this, just look like they're in a kind of completely different world to me.
Mhm.
And it was
Yeah.
almost like when I first started going to record shops, and you're looking at, there was no internet, so you're just looking, but going by the album
Yeah.
artwork or the
Yeah.
single artwork.
Mhm.
That's what really drew you in, or drew me in. And it was kind of like, through the looking glass. It's just like,
Mhm.
wow, this is something that I want to be part of it, but it felt so, kind of far away. But there was a real kind of attraction to
Yeah,
it.
of course. I was lucky, when I was really young, going to this record store in Phoenix, Zia Records, and the same thing happened later on in San Diego when I moved here, a place called Off the Record. Like, the people that worked there were, and maybe it was sort of like me and the Cramps, like, but the people that worked there were like, "Oh, this is that young kid, that little kid or whatever," and they would kinda tell me like, check this out, like, buy this
Mm,
record," and I was like, "Oh," and without them, like, I probably wouldn't have discovered The Birthday Party, or I don't know, like No Means No. Oh, whatever.
mm,
Maybe No Means No because it was like linked through Dead Kennedys, but there was just like these like little kind of moments where like someone would be like, you should just get this, and I'd be like, all right, I trust you, and
mm.
see what happens.
What we talk a little bit about, I don't want to get sort of too philosophical, maybe in a sort of practical way, but like situationalism, which I know that's something that I think you're a believer in
Yeah.
kind of, kind of what was it that sort of attracted you to that kind of thinking?
Well, for me, it was really strange because I now know that like all of the Sex Pistols aesthetic was kind of used or borrowed from like situationist ideals.
Mm,
Jamie Reed, their main art director, was like
mm,
heavily into that stuff, and so it was when I got that book, Lipstick Traces. It was, I think that's probably one of my favorite books, but it like kind of tied everything together for me, and it goes back to like French anarchists and like their art movement trying to use politically, um, like political I guess statements or ideas in a
Mm,
creative way where it's not just like this overtly political thing in your face. There's an element of depth to it and a little bit of thought that you have to put into it to get what's being directed at you. And so it
mm,
was like really interesting to kind of see that and to kind of welcome this like, oh, I've been like obsessing over the artwork of Jamie Reed
mm,
without even really understanding the validity of it. And then that was like, oh, situationist, I get it. And that makes so much sense. And then I kind of see how like punk is seeped in that. And that was like the obvious um sort of connection for me or thing to get me interested in the larger perspective of situationist. And then like, diving in and getting like copies of Situationist International publications
mm,
and kind of learning about like different key players and people that said and did stuff. And then, also like I think punk has ties to things like street art and stuff too. And so I got really into like figuring out like um just activist
mm.
goals and like pranks and just all these different things that I think kind of come under the umbrella of what like situationism is.
Because obviously, again, so like humor is
Completely.
kind of a big part of
Yeah.
what you do and what you kind of ascribe to.
Yeah, because I learned that at an early age. Like when I was in my first band, Struggle, we were just like we're just political and we fucking hate
Mm,
cops, we hate government, we burn the flag, like just it was kind of just like and I think that's fine. And there's like and we were taking cues from like I don't know like Crass or Napalm Death or whatever, and there was like it was
mm,
very serious minded, and I was like, oh, I think like humor might be a way to like maybe reach people on the other side, but also
mm,
like humor is like really really effective at like combating the enemy. Like
yeah,
if you can destroy your enemy with wit, you're fucking untouchable,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, because and also too like this it's like full circle. Like there was this skinhead group in San Diego called the San Diego Boot Boys, and they were like total notorious dicks, and like they beat up everybody at shows all the time, and
Mm,
they wanted to kill not they wanted to like fuck up everybody and Struggle because we had these shirts that said fuck your traditional American values and had a burning flag on it, and they were like after us, and
yeah.
I remember being at the beach one night, not like swimming, but just like at the beach area, and there was like nobody else around, and I was with this girl and this guy, Joe, that one of the Nazi skinhead or white power skinheads was like came up to me, he's like, are you that guy from Struggle? And I was like, no, 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 it's not me. And he knew it or what. And he had a skateboard and he fucking clocked me with his skateboard in the
Ooh,
head. And I remember like spinning out and like hitting the ground. And the girl I was with was like trying to get in the middle, and he wouldn't hit her because she was a woman, and he and she was kind of like pushing me back or pushing him
mm,
back, and he was like um I can't remember exactly what he said to me, but he was like, the basic shit. You're a communist, you're a fag, like whatever, all the basic things.
mm,
And I'm like,
yeah.
yeah, yeah, all right. And I was like, dude, and this is like, and I had just found out about this guy, Joe. He was like the notorious bad, like the worst one. And I was like, dude, it's so crazy because I found out that your dad is Mexican and your name is Jose and you're not white power. And it was like his face just like turned white, white, like whiter than white, and it was really crazy because it like it could have backfired on me because I feel like giving like saying that kind of shit could have made like and could have like destroyed me. But at this point, after he had hit me and my friend was screaming and some other people came around, and so there was
Mm,
like there wasn't going to be any more violence, and or if there was, it was going to be very brief. And I remember just kind of getting up and being like, "Yo, like." And I don't, I don't know how I said it, but I wasn't like, "Yo," like I wasn't cool. I was probably fucking freaking out, and my head was bleeding. But I was like, you're white power. Your name's Jose, dude. Like that's so funny to me, you know. And I'm like, and I said you have to live with that, and I that was it, you know. And it was really empowering for me. And
Yeah.
so I kind of found this like element of humor in how to like get through these situations. It can totally backfire sometimes, but I like doing shit like that. I love pranks. I used to always go to this like there was this Christian bookstore when I was in my teens that would have like all this homophobic shit in their window display, and we would just go there at night and super glue their locks shut every night. And so like it would. I mean, they'd have to get a locksmith every time, and this is before there was like CCTV TV cameras and stuff like that, and so
Yeah.
it was just great fun for me.
I mean, I can see with like with that, like the kind of like the parallels you mentioned about, earlier on your cult and culture podcast having In Decline on
Yeah.
there as well, and the kind of the humor that's in some of the stuff that they do. I mean, some of it's kind of very, but it's. I agree with you, and I struggle with that. I don't think I think the easy thing to do, isn't it, is to to kind of say this is shit, this sucks, this is really fucking bad, blah blah blah. But to find a witty way to approach that is kind of like the intelligent way, and because how that's what will entice people, and kind of like that people will listen to that more than they'll hear a preachy kind of.
Yeah. Also, when you're mad and you're like, fuck you, like against the opposite or the oppressor knows they like got the rise out of you. If you can keep your composure and keep your cool and be
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
art joke, and then
true.
like they didn't get you, you won.
Yeah.
Like I always do this thing too, like where, when you're like road rage and you're like, and people are like,
Mm,
fuck, you're so mad. And you're like, ah, I just kind of like, try to take a step back. And like, if you just casually, like if someone does something shitty to you and there's like aggression happening, if you just give them a thumbs down and like nothing, there's so
yeah.
much there. Like you're not phased. You're just like, yeah, you fucked up. And that's it, and like just little things like that, I think work more when you're trying to like fuck with people.
Yeah.
Like
Is
giving
it?
a
Is
thumbs
it?
down to a cop for being a dick is so rad. If you can if you like don't get arrested, but just a thumbs down, just like, oh, that was a dick move. Yeah.
Thinking of those kind of sort of absurd situations that kind of happen. Those like that don't make any sense. We were in India recently and hired a scooter. We're driving around, and the driving there is just insane. I mean,
Yeah.
it's completely bonkers, and it's almost like you have to take whatever Western rules that you've learned and just kind of ditch them and just kind of laugh at some of the stuff that happens. You just because if you get mad, and I've done that, I've got mad, and it doesn't. It just sends your blood pressure through the roof. But if you can just kind of laugh at it and think, "Oh, this is just the fucking way it is," just roll with it and kind of
Yeah.
like have a bit of a laugh about it. Everybody's okay, and it does like the humor does have a kind of calming effect, doesn't
Yeah.
it?
It does, and I think like if you like also getting mad at a simple thing, like it's one thing to get mad at like police brutality or
Yeah,
fucking Elon Musk sea Kyling or something, but like if you can just like let that moment pass,
yeah,
you do yourself a disservice for getting mad. If you just be like, you know what, that person's a fucking dick, and they're gonna just be a dick, and they're gonna
yeah.
eventually get their ass handed to them. I mean, that's one thing I always realize. Like, you know what, let that person be a fuckhead. They're gonna get their ass handed to them by someone else who can't tolerate it. Like me, I'm just
Mm,
gonna let it happen. Like it's a blip, and like now it's gone.
mm.
So,
Go,
yeah.
going through life. Um, how have you kind of dealt with your self belief? In kind of in what you're doing. Basically, yeah. How have you handled your self belief in what you're doing? If that makes
What do you mean
sense.
by self belief?
Self belief, like believing in yourself that what you're doing
Oh,
is kind of right. Every time you kind of go on stage, or
yeah.
you
Oh,
kind of pick up you form a new band and you're doing something that's a little bit different for the first time.
I guess I I kind of like feel like I approach it like right now this seems relevant to me and that's it. Like I don't think I look at
Mm,
it like is this good or bad or justified or worthy? Like do I get something out of this thing
mm,
and then evaluate it as it happens because I don't know that it's like fully formed consciousness in on my own end. Like um my ability to work with a group of people on a project is in itself just bizarre, I suppose. You know, like I'm like, oh shit, like we're all doing this thing together. Is it good or bad? I don't know. But you know, at the end of the day, like if we enjoy it,
that's the
that's my
thing.
limit. Like that's my like gauge and like is this justified? Is my time and effort being spent justified on this? If I'm enjoying it, great. If someone else doesn't, that's that. But you know, there's also times where I'm like, oh, what we've been doing is pretty dumb. Let's stop. You know, and so that
Mm,
happens too.
mm.
So yeah, I mean, maybe
I mean,
like go on.
I was going to say, I really admire that because I mean, one thing that I've struggled with has been, uh, I'm a ton better at it now, but through my like kind of worrying, and these things are kind of interlinked, aren't they? But kind of like just my, I don't know, worrying about what people think,
Mm,
of what I do, or the way I behave and things
mhm.
like that, and that has impacted my own, kind of self belief, in things that I've done, or it's maybe sometimes stop doing, not do something, because I'm thinking, oh, I'm tons better at it now, but
Yeah, a lot of people are really comfortable shitting on you for doing something.
it can be really debilitating. Yeah, totally. Yeah, and yeah, that I mean that is something that I would completely fear that. That would be almost like the ultimate thing that I would fear. People shitting on me for doing something.
It's not that bad. After a while, you kind of like I'll find humor in it and stuff. Like someone's trash. Like it's pretty rare that someone will shit on me and there'll be depth to it that I can be like, oh
Yeah,
man, they're right. You know, usually I'm like, that's your fucking shit
yeah,
talking. You know, because
yeah.
I think maybe like you know, and people usually find the lowest common denominator, and I think that's fine. Yeah, I mean, there probably isn't a single thing that I do that I like am part of that I put out there that doesn't have at least one person shitting on it. You know, I'm like,
Mm,
it's gonna happen.
mm,
And that's fine. Because I mean, the crazy thing that I think of is like there's a ton of stuff out there that I don't like. I don't even like music. Like I think most music's garbage. But like the
mm,
fact that someone's just gonna be like, I need to tell them that I think this is bad, you know, and I'm like, well, joke's on you for wasting the time. Like, because if your
yeah,
shit sucks, you won't know that I think that because it sucks so bad. I don't even care to go tell you, you know. So
yeah.
I don't know. There's a lot to it because also when I and that this maybe this goes back to like the situationist. It definitely goes back to like my perception of the Sex Pistols when I was a little kid or
Mm,
most punk bands is like for me if you do something and people are reacting negatively you're still succeeding because like what happens is when they're indifferent that's when people are just like whatever then you're failing like I want to be able to like I want you to love it or hate it but there's no if you're
it's
yeah
it's
you
funny.
fucked up.
It's funny you mentioned that because like in one of my very early episodes, I it was with Dave Haslam. Dave is I don't know if you know him, but he was a DJ at the Manchester's Hacienda back in the
Whoa, okay,
kind of late
yeah.
'80s, early '90s, and he's a writer now. He still does the odd sort of DJ thing, but that's where he made his name, and he's a great writer as well. Really good music knowledge and understanding of music. And in the early '80s in Manchester, he produced like this fanzine called Debris, and it was a kind of hand knitted fanzine, and he would take it round to cafes, record shops, and music venues and stuff like that. And he said he put a pile in this venue, and then he went to the toilet for a piss, and he said written on the wall above the urinal was debris is shit. And he just thought, do you know what? I think I've made it now. Because he got
Yeah.
it's exactly what you said. He got that reaction. The
Yeah.
person didn't like it, but it's better than just like having nothing there, you know?
Yeah. There's a lot of really dumb shit that I cannot be bothered about. Like, and so if you are
Mm,
making them react that way, then fucking you're doing something right. I mean, I think like probably I'm assuming like Henry Rollins or Jelly Biafra or someone said it, but it's true. It like really is. If you can
mm,
upset people enough to react, then like you're doing it right.
yeah. I think
So
I, I think you're right. I think that's
yeah,
definitely right.
yeah.
But
But
it's kind of like it can be counterintuitive, can't it? To I guess to some people.
Yeah, completely. Because I'll be honest, like sometimes I'm like, God damn it, this is like hard.
Mm,
Like I spent like hard as in like I spent a lot of time as a support band, uh, playing to people that absolutely hated what we were doing,
mm,
and I understand that like I've been able to create the tools on how to like maneuver that situation. But it's
mm,
one thing to play to an audience that is like not there to see you and they really don't want you to be there. And then it's another thing to play to an audience that's like loves you. So like
mm,
they're both um challenging in their own way, but the one is like a lot of work. You're like, this is a lot of work, but it keeps you sharp to where then when you do play to the audience that loves you, it's like, oh, we got this. Like we're just gonna
mm,
rip and it'll be fine. But it's crazy to like um just it's crazy to get shit on by people.
yeah.
It definitely weighs on you after a while. But you just have to be strong. I think like we're seeing this with the left in general right now, and I don't want to sound like a crotchety older person or whatever, but like people are really soft. They're like, you said this, and then they're like, cancel
Mm,
them and I'm like, I don't know, like just roll with it. Like people are gonna fuck up. Everyone fucks up.
yeah.
And it depends on what that person's intent is, like, and again, like, I get it, like, maybe on a larger perspective, like, there's, like, the punching Nazis thing,
Mm,
yeah, we should fuck up Nazis. I completely, completely, completely agree. Nazis are fucking terrible. But I also think, like, I don't know, I wanna talk to someone and try to, like, maybe connect with them and maybe at least have them respect or consider my viewpoints and
mm,
maybe change theirs. So like again, like going back to like having Wadi from the Exploited on our podcast, everyone was like, he's a Nazi, and he like just got a show canceled right before we had him on our podcast in
mm,
Southern California because the venue was scared because there's always like threats. And I was like, man, like let's have him on our podcast and like let's talk about that, and he did openly, and it was great. I feel like
mm,
he had a very valid point. He thinks differently, but like we agreed on things. I see his perspective. He
yeah.
saw mine. Whatever. It's fucking great. Where like most people are like, fuck that guy, get him out of here. Like don't get And I'm like, what? That sucks. Like
Yeah.
people are I think should be allowed to fuck up or to be fucked up and like correct themselves. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. I guess it's the way that we are. That we're sort of very quick to rush to judgment and to, it's this sort of self division again.
mhm.
From I don't know. We just have this kind of self destruct sort of thing where, people aren't given the chance. Fair enough. If it's kind of current and they're saying some shit, okay, right. But I think for some cases, then sure, you need to kind of, I think, your approach where you're thinking, okay, I want to reason, I want to kind of understand and sort of understand the reasons why, and then understand the happenings. That's
Yeah,
all important as well. But we're not giving those chances now.
completely. And the Joe White Power Joe, also Jose, that beat me up, was
Mm,
interesting because what I had later found out was that like his parents separated and his mom married or dated a wait, no, wait. Okay, so okay, his parents separated, but his dad was abusive to him, and his dad was Mexican, so he grabbed onto this like white vision or whatever, and like
Right.
and so he became a white supremacist, and it was kind of crazy. So like I feel like maybe, and not that my snarky comment to him as he was beating me up was like the thing that changed him, but
Mm,
fucking for as a 15-year-old for a split second, I swear that what I said to him like clicked,
mm,
because like I get
yeah.
it, like his abusive dad who is Mexican is terrible for being abusive to him, or
Mm,
his family, mom, whatever, to him. But does that make Mexican people bad? No. So I think he was probably like only a couple years older than me. He seemed like a fucking grown ass man, but he was bigger than me for sure. But regardless, I think it was just like, hey, that's you're hating downwards, and that's
mm,
part of the problem. Like we maybe look at like gender roles, maybe look at like I don't know, fucking who knows why the dad was abusive, I
mm,
but like going and like picking apart this thing, oh, he's Mexican, therefore like all I'm gonna be a white supremacist. It didn't make sense, obviously, but I don't think he thought it through. And it's like I think, and again, like going back to like neo-Nazis and shit, like that's what like Tom Metzger and people like that from like White Army Resistance, they preyed on that. They found like kids that were from broken families and had nothing, and they grabbed them and took them under their wing and used this like sort of like sense of community or belonging. And I think a lot of people that are bigots do that. Fucking politicians are like super keen on doing that shit, dividing and conquering. And so,
yeah.
um, I don't know. I look at the left and they're being dicks to one another. It's like, man, you're acting like a fucking politician, like, and
Yeah, totally.
it's lame. It's
It's so
super
it's
lame.
so yeah. I mean, it's kind of so divisive, and just sort of shooting themselves in the foot with all this, and they make themselves just no better than some of the dicks on the right that are doing the really sort of horrible shit, and yet these people are just not seeing that the strength that they should have in unity, and they're just concentrating on their own kind of little sort of power base.
Well, also that posturing gives them like, I called out so and so because we
Yeah,
were on
all that shit.
tour.
Yeah.
We were on tour and someone was shitting all over us, Deaf Club, because no one in the band was like technically deaf, and we're like, oh my god,
Uh,
this is happening. And so we got our show canceled because no one in the band was deaf, and I was like, yeah, fuck these people. And then it was crazy because we have friends that are actually deaf who like our band, and who are our
mm,
friends and who support us. And our band name isn't to like make fun of deaf people.
yeah.
That's not the objective. And it's just like, okay, so you're gonna be this like trans anarchist,
Mm,
super righteous political activist, and you're gonna come at us, but you're gonna like still, fuck with like Amazon Prime or whatever, like like
yes.
it's like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
pick a lane, motherfucker. You're gonna come at
I
us.
know.
I
Yeah.
don't know. It's weird.
With you have your kind of creativity, like I said in the intro, to me your creativity is feels very instinctive, as to you do things what instinctively sort of feels right. do you, I mean, do you think I'm right in that? And also, when what are you a perfectionist in your creativity?
The creativity thing is weird. I feel like I have like honed in on the ability to look at my limited resources and also to think outside the box and find resources that might essentially help where like normal people wouldn't look at it like that. And I
Mm,
think it comes from the fact that like I don't have a lot to work with most of the time, and so I will work with whatever I can that's like
yeah,
obtainable.
yeah.
And then the perfectionist thing is kind of crazy because I have like I know I have ADD and I want everything to be a certain way, but I
Mm,
also realize that like working on a project with multiple people means compromising. And I think the one
mm,
thing that I am a perfectionist with is that like only want to fuck with people that are like, I only want to work with people who are, to me, like top tier, you know,
Yeah.
because then I know, like, if I'm compromising like this vision that I have to, and I don't want to say this in an egotistical way, but to like accommodate everybody. So like we can all kind of agree on the
Yeah.
thing. I have like faith in the fact that like it's going to be good because I trust all those people that are in this thing that
It's
it
it's
will be
it's
good.
it's like the compromise that you're making is it's kind of like a good compromise because the people that you're working with are good
They're
people.
the best. Like I already know that they're like great at what they do, so we're going to be fine.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, that makes sense.
because because I also think like the ego is a motherfucker, and I've also dealt with people that are like, "This is how it's going to be," and then you're just like, "This kind of sucks." Like that you're making
Mm,
everybody do it this one way. Like we need to kind
mm,
of all be on board. And so I think that when you can kind of step aside and not be that dick,
yeah.
then it's good. And I really enjoy like working with people and like putting trust in it. And like I at times where like I feel like I could be critical of an outcome of like whatever we created. I think a
Mm,
lot of it falls on me because it's like, oh, why is that not good? I think maybe because I like instead of me being like, oh, the riff's bad or this, I'm like, no, the like my lyric shouldn't be there or like
right.
something, you know, kind of look at it more like how could I have made their thing it's our thing, but like their
You t-
aspect of it better.
does that sound like you're taking the kind of responsibility, like almost like the kind of the weight of it on your shoulders?
Sure, yeah,
Mm.
maybe, but also like, who am I to be like, you did this fucked up, you know, or you did this wrong? Like, I don't know, like, because people say that to me, and it's like sometimes I'm like, God damn, dude, you're being a dick, and like, yeah, I fucked up, but you're being a
Yeah.
dick, you know. I mean, like, Brian from Def Club's a great example. He's always fucking shitting on my vocals and my lyrics. I'm like, God damn it, are you serious, man? Like, you know, this is fucking kind of sucks to hear this again. So, uh,
I was going to say, you know, with that, you know, when it's not perhaps quite how you want it. I mean, how do you feel about that? Because I mean, there's some things that I've done and I've had to compromise, and it's not always been the thing that I wanted to do, but you do it for whatever reason, you know, for the greater good or whatever, and I have to kind of like wrestle with that sometimes myself, like you know, okay, let's just kind of let it go and we'll kind of go with it,
yeah, because you could be an ultimate perfectionist and fine tune something and never ever get it completed.
get it
Fuck,
completed. Yeah.
I heard someone talking about this recently, I can't remember who he was. It was like he was saying that he's a perfectionist, and anytime he's working on a project, he has to say like if there's no guide, there's no deadline. He has to say if I was doing this for someone else, um, what would their like deadline be,
Mm,
you know, like
mm,
and then that would make you stop like
yeah.
here's where I'm gonna have to like say this is done because
Yeah.
otherwise you could just keep doing it and
Keep
making it
doing
better.
it. So many
Yeah,
iterations. Yeah. I think. I mean, actually, from other musicians that I've spoken to, this is a common thing that you know some are just like kind of you know they're having to actively sort of work on their perfectionism to say stop, stop. You know,
yeah.
it's okay. It's good enough. You know,
Yeah,
because otherwise it just doesn't. It's just never ending. You know, just like little tinkers and stuff like that, which are completely sort of inconsequential.
I
But it
think
comes down
that
to a
there's
kind of
like
personality. Yeah, go
it's
on.
very very rare, maybe non-existent, where I'm like that thing, like let's say like that record's perfect, you know, I can
Mm,
always go back and be like that song sucks or that part sucks or the art sucks or you know
mm. Always
there's
something.
always that, but then I know not to do that because I'm like, you know that was what it was. We did that thing. That's our new standard. Let's beat
Yeah.
that. Because I really do wonder how it must feel to be in a band to be like, our shit doesn't stink. That's perfect. And like, I'm gonna, you know, and it's like, because then where do you go from there? You know, you're like, I've already achieved perfection. That's
I mean, I mean, some people are perhaps different to me in how they look at it, but like as a kind of consumer of music, I kind of, I I mean, I don't hear the imperfections that you do as the kind of creator, but when I do hear it, I kind of like it because it's sort of it shows that there are humans doing it, and humans are kind of fallible. They make mistakes, and in a way, I kind of relate to that more. And certainly in live shows, certainly I love seeing kind of fuck ups and in live shows. I've seen it a few times recently with bands that I've been to see, and I kind of like it. It just
Yeah.
shows that they are people, and almost like that relatability. It's like it shows that they're just like me. If that makes
Yeah.
sense. You know what I
Well,
mean?
I think recording and live are two completely different things, because I think you can perfect both of them. And when you recordings are recordings, like you have the ability to fine tune everything. Live is a moment in time that you should only experience. And I think live is like you're performing this music sonically. You're
True.
also performing visually and aesthetically, and there's a
Yeah.
thing happening. There's a vibe. There's energy being shared. I mean, it's one thing to put on a record and be like, this is killer. Makes me feel good. I love this record. But it's when you're seeing the band or the artist perform, there
Mm,
should be energy being shared amongst everybody in the venue. It should be an event, and I think that
yeah.
you can compromise um, technical ability or perfection or certain elements for all the other things that are stimulating. Like for me, there's like I always see like photos of me as like a younger person watching bands,
Mm,
and or even like not as a younger person, but like I'll see like 31G artists, and I'm like in a photo of their live performance, and I'm just staring at them like, and like everyone's going nuts, but I am like fucking focused on them. Like, what are you guys doing? Because there's so much information. There's just so many things. I mean, stress positions, like we talked about earlier before we started recording, is a good
mm,
example. Well, I remember when I first saw them, everyone's like kind of going nuts and stuff, and I was just captivated, like with each player, like
yeah.
everyone is just delivering this to me like perfection. Did it sound like the record? No, it was in a crummy small little spot, and there was
Mm,
no, it wasn't a good PA, but I was like fixated on all of this other stuff, and I think that was so much more. There's so much more value than like I think a normal person would be like. I want to see the perfect thing. I want to see like it's like Madonna lip syncing. Like yeah. I mean, like it sounds great because she's not really singing it. Like I'd rather her just go like rip and like fuck up or whatever.
totally.
Um,
I'm totally
but
with you on that.
there's a lot of it too. Like I think a lot of it was like has been music or art, and how we perceive and consume music has been shifting due to like synthetic stuff. So like a lot of overly produced music where it has like every kick drum and every snare is quantized and sequenced to sound exactly the same, and there's no way a real kick drum is going to now sound like this thing that we think of as like doof, 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 for like the clubs or however people are consuming modern pop music. So our
Mm,
perspective of like what we assume or are subconsciously used to now is different than
mm,
like, let's say, the classics, like hearing a John Bottom kick drum. Like it's not like we're not going to hear that. You're not going to achieve what something happened, how it was achieved then. Now it's done
yeah.
different. So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe
No.
I
So
agree with you.
yeah, I agree. I think that, yeah, the idea of perfection. Yeah, it's an interesting one because sometimes it's again kind of counter to what your personality is, or what you were kind of born with or became. I don't know. It's a weird sort of thing, and especially when you're I mean, it's one thing. So I guess sort of being a solo artist as well, compared to what you like when you're in a band, or you're just in a kind of project that's collaborating when you've got others to think of, which then makes me think of how when you've got all these sort of different personalities in a room, about how you kind of manage each other, if that sort of makes sense.
Mm.
Those kind of like, okay, so what makes her tick, what makes him tick, and all this kind of stuff. It
Because you put each
makes
other in check.
Yeah,
and if you're a solo artist, there's no one putting you in check.
Nobody there. Yeah.
I struggled with that writing a book because publishing that book GG Alien was like kind of like putting out a solo record in a sense. And it's funny because it's coinciding with this new Def Club record. So on the new Def Club record, I use like the offensive F word, not fuck, but the other F word that's like not acceptable. And it was an internal struggle for the band to ultimately deny or accept me using that one word.
Yeah.
Faggot was the word. And
Yeah.
so and we debated it and debated it and debated it, and I'm grateful for that. And people understood my perspective, I understood their perspective, and we landed on the fact that we thought it was suitable. And so I think it was really, really important because I wasn't saying it like, you are this. I was saying like, I'm called this. And I use the word that's alarming to some people. But that book, GG Alien, it's about like my time at a gay bar, working in there for 8 years, and it's full of the F word. It's full of all kinds of shit that I think those like people that we've been talking about, those like sort of like Karens of the left, like the conservative, left, whatever, they're gonna be like, you're fucking canceled, like you're such a this or that or this. And so in my mind, I'm like, okay, it's strategic. Like I need blurbs for the back of my book, like, like press blurbs. I'm going to get people that I feel like are going to put me in check, sort of like say like, hey, this is bad, or you shouldn't be doing this, or like give me like credibility to like be like, yo, fuck you guys. If you have a problem with me, like look at my homies that like have my back. So and I was like completely worried about publishing that book. And so far no one said anything. And I welcome it. I welcome the criticism because I would love to be challenged, but I don't know. I think I'm smart enough to like cover my ass for the most part, So
I mean, that I guess sort of two things there. There's what on the book, sending it to people that you whose opinions you respect, who are going to give you kind of like honest opinions on it. There's that, how you kind of receive that, and then there's the the Def Club situation where you're kind of like in a negotiation, aren't you, to try and work it out. Where you start with kind of polar positions, and I guess that's what kind of being in a band is about, where you have your equals.
I mean, the Def Club one was interesting because like the song that I say that in was like it at first like, oh well, I'm not budging, I'm not taking those lyrics out. And then it was like, okay, well, they're not, but someone in the band was like, we're not putting the song on the record. I'm like, all right, fine, fuck it. Don't put the song on the record. Wasted our time recording that. And neither of us budged until a little bit of time happened. And I think like, yeah, they budged. And so now it's on the record. So
there's a softening of
because I think like, well, it was interesting because it's like, because the argument was like, well, why don't you change that word to like something less jarring? And I'm like, I don't know if the less jarring thing is going to say the thing. It's not going to say the thing. Like that fucking whole song's lyric came from this one line. And I was like, that was the start of it. I'm not changing that word. Period. And it's like, would you rather say something that is just like, it's they said a thing, like whatever, or do you want to say something and like be like, that's righteous, or fuck, I'm offended, let me figure this out, let me think about like, I want you to think. I don't want you just to be like, whatever, same old thing, they hate the cops, or whatever, you want to make them be like, what are they saying? Why did they say that word? Like, and then process it. Or relate to it, or whatever the fuck it is. Like, I think that's better and cooler than just taking the middle route and being like, So yeah. Too many people do that.
Yeah, I guess so. But
I think too many people do it when it's so. I don't want to throw anyone under the bus. The thing was like, we were hoping to get on this one label that's like big, and of course they passed on it because it's fucking bullshit music. It's weird music that normal people don't like. But there was a concern. If that song's on there, we're definitely not getting on that label. And I was like, well, so if that label doesn't put it out and like whatever, my 31G or some smaller label does it, like it's fine. And they're like, yes. And I'm like, this makes no fucking sense. So like you're taking the middle ground to be successful, or do you want to take the righteous ground to be successful? Like what's success? Like we're going to be middle ground, blah, and like maybe make a couple of extra bucks, or do you want to be righteous and be like, I'm fucking untethered and like no one's going to mess with me, like I got my shit together, like I stand by this, like I'm saying a thing or doing a thing. It seems like there's more success in that when you're doing it by your own intent,
by your own intent, and I guess sort of kind of staying true to your beliefs, values, whatever you want to call it.
Sure.
It's an interesting one, isn't it? You've got staying true to things and compromise, and where those two things meet. It's a tricky one. It's a tricky one.
Yeah.
And to be able to discuss it and come to a a solution on it, where, and without it, where everybody's happy, nobody walks away with any kind of resentment or whatever, that they feel like okay, that didn't go my way, is a tricky one. It's a real tricky one, because everybody, like these sort of personalities that we have, are all very different. We all have our different little sort of sensibilities and things that sort of stick with us.
Yeah, I don't know. People are wildly complicated.
They are, yeah. I mean, again, sort of before I started this podcast, I never gave two thoughts to, kind of band situations, or and even kind of solo artists with their producer and engineer or whatever, about how those sort of personalities, kind of work together.
Yeah.
But since going into this, I kind of realized actually, there's four human beings there, all very complex, so they've got their own kind of complexities, and it's not easy.
Yeah,
I'm getting all philosophical now, but which I can't resist.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because like there's like the obvious path. Like when we had like we had these two gentlemen from the San Diego Black Panther Party on our podcast, and the out of the two of them, the sort of like elder one, he's a musician, a blues artist, and he really wanted to talk about music a lot, and I was like, oh, I don't really care about blues music, I really care about like the Panther Party and like your activist thoughts, and they, not that I think I signed them up to like think it was like a primarily musical based only discussion, but I feel like he was like, oh, I want to talk to this guy about music. And I was like, I don't care about your fucking band. I want to talk about this righteous shit you guys are doing, And so it was really interesting. But like I think, I'm sure I got more out of it than they did. They were just like, we're talking to this fucking white dude, who cares, But I was like really, really juiced up on like speaking to these activists and like getting their perspective, and it was wildly informative. But I think that like what you're saying, like we have this perspective, and we think the communication or the conversation is going to be this, but it should be whatever happens, whatever we can get to, because I really like knowing the like things that we normally wouldn't talk about. Again, like, you could tell me the top 10 bands that changed your life, but I want to know why you like that shit. Like, why did you go see Jesus and Mary Chain? Why did you get all that weird information that like that's not musical?
Do you know there's another one sort of similar to that, which is I remember like going to like sort of school parties and things like that, parties around somebody's house and stuff like that. I remember there was I had probably at school maybe 3 or 4 people that I knew and I kind of gravitated towards because they liked the same music as me. The rest of them didn't like the same music as me, and and I remember going to this party once and sort of try. There was me and my best friend at the time, and it's sad because I lost touch with him for years and years and years. and then we reconnected a few years ago, and it's so good. It was just literally like we'd never been apart. It was just brilliant. Oh, yeah. But anyway, we were at kind of this party. We were maybe like 16 or so, and we're trying to put on Ein Sturzende Neubauten, right? And it literally cleared the room.
Yeah,
and we were trying to talk to some people about why it was a good thing, why it was good art to have this music on, and there was something like talking about the why. There was something, I don't know. There was just like it just had a good feeling that it got a reaction. I think that was it. Going back to what we were saying about it got a reaction. It was just like, yeah. Then I got known as the guy that played that fucking, those what do you call them? Those fucking pummel hammers.
Yeah.
At this party, when the rest of it was like fucking whammo or something like that,
Yeah, of course. I mean, I think my whole life has been like that. Like, I mean, even when I moved to San Diego after my dad died, the middle school that I went to was really interesting, because when I went there, you would think, there was like a couple punks, but they like associated with these Nazi skinheads, and it was really weird. This is the 90s, so there was like a lot of that shit. And ideally, like me showing up wearing like a Sex Pistols shirt, you'd think like I would just hang out with the skinheads as well as the punks, but they hated me because for whatever reason, and all the cholos were like, oh, this guy is like new and he's hated by the Nazis who we fucking hate. They're like, oh, you're gonna hang out with us. So here I am, 12 years old, like just chilling with cholos at school, and like, they're like calling me Crazy Spike. Like they gave me like a nickname, and like I was Crazy Spike, hanging out with the cholos, not hanging out with the punks and the skins who were Nazis, and I was like, this is fucking weird, because normally my world would be right there, or my community, but I'm going to hang out with these guys that are, and I found a way to like, and I think that might've been like one of the very, very early little like sort of nuggets of like intellect onto like, the obvious path isn't always the best one.
Isn't always the best. Yeah.
And I'm grateful for that. It really, I mean, even like kind of liking this girl when I was 12, and I remember her name, Cynthia. She was Cynthia's Romano. She was like, Crazy Spike, I can't like you because you're white, Holmes, but you can hang out with all of us. Like, it's all good. But I can't like you because you're a white kid, And I was like, I don't understand, And I'm like, what about the fucking skinheads? We both hate them, So it's weird. Yeah.
Oh, man. Well, that seems like a decent place to end. I mean, we could go on for ages, but it's really, it's been great to talk to you, man.
Of course. And thanks for, before we started recording, experiencing the earthquake with me. That was crazy for me to be.
That was so wild. So wild. Literally sort of saw the room kind of shake.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyhow, I really enjoy seeing you. I'm jealous that you're going to be seeing Stress Positions and all the other homies over there soon. So I look forward to seeing you in person again.